Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the Proof of Words podcast. It's great to finally get you on. Um, for those of you that don't know, Alex is the managing director of High Tech Gründerfonds. It's Germany's largest venture capital group. And on top of that, he is a very, very avid Bitcoiner. I have one of the distinct pleasures of being the founder of a company I was CEO of that High Tech Gründerfonds invested in. This is iconic, ended up becoming Deutsche Digital Assets. Alex and his team were one of our very first investors, so it's an absolute pleasure here to have you on the podcast, Alex.
Hi Pat, yeah, happy to be there. And yeah, I mean, you're one of the front runners in the crypto, especially Bitcoin space, I guess. And yeah, happy to be on the podcast.
Well, so it's definitely, I mean, first of all, have appreciated your support over the years. I want to be able to be who I am professionally without you and Hot TEF support. But it's been a bit of a roller coaster for us in the Bitcoin world over the last couple of weeks, right? I mean, basically, as of we're doing this recording right now, a couple of weeks ago, we had the Bybit hack, which pulled back the valuation of assets a little bit, just around security concerns, and typically markets will oversell in such situations. But I want to start on the Bitcoin side of things, and then we can dive into everything else. But I mean, what are your high level thoughts on a Bitcoin strategic reserve for a country? Does it make sense for any country, not just the United States, but any country to acquire Bitcoin either through tax dollars or printing its own money or I don't know, whatever means they have? I mean, does it make sense for a country to do that?
Yeah, yes, I think it makes a total sense because I mean, if you look at the properties of Bitcoin, what it can do, it's highly liquid. You can transfer it very quickly around the globe. You have total control yourself if you hold the private key yourself. So that's
I don't know. It might be more frightening for some people to have Donald Trump holding the private keys to billions of Bitcoin than it is to have the nuclear keys, right?
yes. And then that, I mean, that's the properties of Bitcoin. And then on the other hand, the countries have reserves. I mean, they have government bonds. The Swiss National Bank has a huge stock portfolio, by the way, including MicroStrategy, so holding
Hmm.
Bitcoin indirectly. And then they also have gold. And traditionally, gold is the main reserve asset. And very often it has been said that Bitcoin is digital gold. So it's very close. I mean, it's gold. It's a little bit similar, but in many ways it's better. It's digital. It's easy to transport. To transport gold around the globe. That's quite an exercise. And like Germany has like around 40% of the gold in New York, and
Hmm.
we don't know if we could get it if he wanted it. So especially with Trump, he might say, well, the gold, well, you have an open bill for not investing enough in defense. So we just
Yeah,
net
Germany,
out.
you didn't pay 100 billion to NATO for the last 60 years, so we're going to take your 100 billion in gold. I mean,
Exactly.
there's a huge risk that he could do that.
There's a huge risk, and then even if we got it, it would take a while to, to check it, to transport it, and then to store it in I guess in Germany. So I think Bitcoin would be clearly superior. So from that perspective, if you hold any reserves, which does make sense for anyone, private people, companies, and also countries. So if
Hmm.
you have a reserve, Bitcoin being part of the reserve makes a lot of sense. As much sense as gold today is a significant part of the reserves of many countries. And we've seen the gold price shooting up in the last 12 months or two
Oh
years,
yeah.
actually. And the main buyer are governments. So it's not the gold ETFs, it's not private demand, it's not the jewelry demand, it's not the industrial demand, it's countries. So the analogy is so close. If it makes sense to buy gold, it does make even more sense to buy Bitcoin.
See, I think you and I, we've discussed this multiple times over the last 5 plus years. I don't view it as gold versus Bitcoin. These assets are very similar in many properties. I mean, gold, it is very malleable. It conducts electricity very well. So there is an element of utility to it. Plus, people like wearing it as jewelry. But its core function is as a store of value. Uh, Being a pure store of value, I think kind of severely discredits what Bitcoin truly is, which is the most perfect form of money that we have. But the narrative that we currently have in today's media, from a mainstream perspective, is that it's this digital gold, this digital store of value. And you know what? It works for the time being. And I think as people learn about digital gold, the store of value, they're going to see that Bitcoin is actually the most perfect form of money over time. But it makes sense in my mind for these two assets to harmoniously exist together.
Totally agree. And I really want to make the point: Bitcoin is not against anything, anyone. It's also, and I think it's important, not against fiat currencies. I think it's just a
Mhm.
new kid on the block. It's a new asset class emerging right now, and I think it just fits into the group of asset classes of reserve assets. It just fits in and has its own niche or justification because of its unique new properties. So it's not against gold, it's not against government. And I really think, and I think Michael Saylor made that point also in the past, Bitcoin can really support the fiat currency. So
Mhm.
if you look at the dollar, which is the world reserve currency, and it seems to be fairly strong. If you look at the performance of the dollar,
Mhm.
it's quite good. So and I think the status of the world reserve currency of the dollar is under severe pressure if you look at the huge deficit.
Yeah.
So the US is paying like 100 billion in interest rate per month. So that's 1,200 billion. Deficit is huge, and it's clear
So
at some
interest
point.
expense has become the number one expense of the United States government for the entire history of the country, or at least as much history as I know. It's been defense
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
obvious
So, so,
reasons,
so,
and the
so,
interest
so,
expense now surpasses defense spending.
so it's clear if that continues, the dollar will at some point crumble. It will at some point,
Mhm.
maybe it's in 2 years, maybe it's in 20 years, or even longer. People will lose confidence, as that has happened all the time in the history with other reserve currencies. So buying a Bitcoin reserve could do what used to be the case to put value behind the dollar when the dollar was backed by gold. So it could strengthen the dollar, it could stabilize the world reserve currency, and that would
Mhm.
stabilize the whole financial system in a way. And at the same time, and I think that's very good. Trump and Musk are cutting costs. I think that's very good
I love
because
what they're doing.
it's
If,
getting rid of. Oh, they're doing some things that are not so good, maybe, but this is, I think, very good. And
I
so
think
so
overall it's like a 90% good. Like, yeah, there's going to be stories of people that justifiably should have had money coming from US aid or something else. But I think that's in the vast minority. The rest of the waste, I'm very happy with what they're cutting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So cutting waste, cutting inefficiencies, cutting things that should not be spent. I think that's very good. So those two things, Bitcoin as a reserve and cutting cost, could significantly stabilize the dollar, which would lead to a stronger dollar, I think. So
Hmm.
I don't think they're weakening the dollar because of that.
That's
And
fair.
I think that's good for the world if you have a stable financial system.